Good evening and welcome. This is Shubham and I'll be moderating today's session. Recently, certain news reports based upon the leaked Chinese military documents suggested that Chinese military scientists way back in 2015 discussed to use this coronavirus as a biological weapon. Moreover, recent wave in India, which has dangerously strided in a sudden manner, also raises pertinent questions that needs to be answered. To further discuss upon this issue, we are pleased to have today with us Mr. Kota Mallika Arjun Gupta. He is a researcher at South Asia Terrorism Portal. He is also a doctoral candidate at Jawaharlal Nehru University, where he is pursuing his PhD in Chinese studies. His primary research interest focuses upon China-US relations. He has also presented papers in a plethora of national and international conferences and frequently participates as a resource person in webinars and panel discussions. His other areas of interest include foreign policy of China, China economic investments in Asia, outer space technologies, and sports. Before we move forward, I take this opportunity to briefly introduce about the organizers of today's event. So India-China Study Circle is a think tank that is established by private, non-institutional, voluntary initiative of students from different institutes, including national universities. It primarily focuses upon dynamics of concerning India, China, and intricacies involved in the relationship of both. It is a very good medium to know more about the nitty-gritty of China as well as India. Also, Think India is a platform or a leading student organization of the country, which uh, tries to bring forth students from different premier institutes as well as national institutes like IITs, IIMs, NLUs, IISCs with a nationalistic fervor and a nation first attitude. It tries to provide internships to various students in diverse fields ranging from journalism to legal internships and public policy. Recently, it has come up with an initiative where it has uh, established forums on diverse set of issues and academic fields. The number goes to 26 forums, and it ranges from human rights forum to child rights forum, international relations forum, international law forum. International Relations Forum is one such forum of that 26 cluster. It, it is an initiative which strives towards leading a public discourse in international relations with an Indic perspective and fostering the growth of independent thinking in young minds like all of us. This is a brief introduction about both the organizers of the event. Now we move forward towards the next part of the session. But before that, I would request all the participants to not to turn on their mics. Post your questions in the chat box. In the question answer session, we will be happy to take your questions. Also, before we move forward, I would uh, like to thank Mr. Saurav Sharma, who has graced this event by his presence. He is an assistant professor of political science at National Law University, Punjab. It's all over to Kota sir. The floor is yours.
Uh, Thanks, Shubham, for a detailed introduction and giving me this opportunity to speak on this very important topic, which is also creating global waves. And many people are not ready to speak on this topic because of various reasons. So the significance of this topic and the expertise is also very less in this topic. So uh, I'm not from a scientific background or life sciences or microbiology or virology to confirm anything on this topic, but we have to debate and discuss the existing literature or the narratives which are dominant in the media or even in the publishing world in the last one and a half year since the coronavirus have emerged and dominated the world media and also all our lives. So coming to the origins and biological weapons, which you spoke in the introduction part, let us come to the first thing is that um, in the current status, there are two narratives which are more dominant regarding the origins of coronavirus or COVID-19, which most popularly called or labeled as. Now, where do we stand in this thing is that one of the most dominant narrative is the natural evolution of coronavirus, which was mostly supported and endorsed by many virologists across the world. So this has received a lot of promotion and endorsement from various quarters and various governments, and many people have started to use the terminology which is also similar to the natural phenomena. However, we need to look at the scientific evidences to support these systems and the terminology or the narrative, which are lacking, and hardly we have evidences to prove that it is natural. Then the other significant narrative which is more popular across the world is also the lab as the origin of this coronavirus. So how do we judge and what are the existing literature? Most of it is in the open source, which I would also be speaking because we are also not specialist in this field. But when it comes to the open source documents, whatever exist, so if you are looking at the natural thing, one of the natural thing is that it would be from bats to another animal, host animal, and then to human as a receptor. Then this is a common thing, but however, if we are looking at the history of coronavirus or SARS or similar thing, in 2003, when we have the SARS emergence, the host bat species was identified in just 4 months. And in 2012, when we had MERS as another issue, then we could identify in camels as the host, and then how from camels it went to humans. This was identified in somewhere around 8 to 9 months. Now we come to this coronavirus. It is almost close to 18 to 21 months. As whichever date you want to look at it. Somebody would take the reference as October 2019, somebody would take November, somebody would take December 2019, and you add on 19 another 18 months or 17 months. So it is closer to almost 2 years, and then we don't have any evidence from the Chinese side, which is a bat origin, means the species of bats which you have this coronavirus, the origin. Neither we have the another host animal from where this virus went to the another animal, which was the case in the earlier SARS and MERS. So we don't have that also. So then comes the last one, is that neither we are not able to find any evidences of humans who got infected before December 2019. So these three lack of evidence do not support the argument of many people, do not support for a natural phenomena. Then we have to look at the artificial or the lab theory, which is very interesting and which is so when we are looking at the lab theory, there are many people who are giving many theories. Now, where does the investigation go? Now, what kind of evidences do we have, and what are the existing literature that we have? So then coming to the next thing is that if you are looking that natural theory, natural evolution from China, South China seafood or fruit market. So that is the first place where if you are looking from a natural source, then that is the first. Then second is the lab. And if we are coming to the lab, it should be Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is the only lab in China with P4 or pathogen level 4, which is the highest level of intensity, or BSL4 level, which is biosafety level 4. So that lab and this seafood market are very close in distance. So do they have the ability to transfer from one place to another? That is one question. Now coming to the second question, do labs had this research? Yes, SARS viruses have escaped from labs in Japan, Taiwan, and some other countries in the past also. So this is not the first time that some viruses have escaped from labs and they do create some problems. So there were similar incidents in UK in 1960s when some people got smallpox, and it also resulted in the death of few people. So lab theory can't be ruled out in this case, which should be examined very closely. And in fact, both natural and lab theory, both should be examined closely. So what is the role of virologist? So some two sets of virologists have said it is a natural phenomena of virus, and there's no lab origin. And the same person is sitting in the WHO commission, which went into investigate the origin of COVID-19. So he's also having, he also funded this Wuhan Institute of Virology for a couple of years. He also trained some of the Chinese scientists, one Chinese scientist in this Wuhan Institute of Virology lab. And then to what level they have trained? They have trained these scientists, Chinese scientists, to the extent that they can artificially do experiments with coronavirus. So the statements given by these virologists who are endorsing the natural phenomena now, before 2019 and after 2019 December, vary significantly. Somebody said that researching on coronavirus is for the betterment of human civilization, and we can predict the next future diseases very quickly. The same scientist would be telling you that after a couple of months, when the disease spreads and the whole world gets infected, this is a natural phenomena. This does not have anything related to the laboratory. Now, if people are sitting at that level and telling us that it should not be questioned, then there is something gray in this thing, that it is natural and it happened via bat. Now, what is the contribution of this lab, Wuhan Institute of Virology, is that it has developed nearly 100 types of coronavirus in the last 5 years. So the Chinese scientist, one Chinese scientist had visited multiple times to caves in Wuhan, which are known for having bats and species in large numbers. So they have collected a huge amount of bat viruses. So what kind of experiments are being performed in that lab really are something to be looked at. So they have collected coronavirus and they're trying to artificially separate them into genetically, and they're trying to put multiple things and trying to make them so that these coronavirus attack the human species. So this is something that they were trying to look at, so that certain things can be prevented in future. If you are able to understand the behavior of this virus, how it impacts the human species, and then you can also control it, then it's a very good thing in scientific thing if you are doing that advanced research. But all these things also involve risk. What is the risk? The virus can spill out of the lab and then go to other places and then infect the humans. Now, do we have the capability to control this thing using a vaccine or medicine? The scientist who says that today it is not a lab origin virus also said before December 19, on December 9, 2019, that there is no vaccine for this kind of thing in his own interview. So these are some various questions regarding the lab. Now, coming to the other part, does China has a program on biological warfare or biological weapons? What is the thing? One of the defense minister, Chinese defense minister, who was in during 2000 till 2002, means he was for 10 years from 1992 to 2002, and significantly under Deng Xiaoping's leadership, said that Deng Xiaoping always preferred to have China to look at biological weapons rather than the aircraft carrier in their arsenal. So China did not invest much money into aircraft carrier for a longer duration of time. If you look at India has aircraft carrier right from 1960s or 70s, but China was not having it. And what was the preference of Deng Xiaoping was biological weapon rather than a aircraft carrier. So this is the argument or the interview given by Chinese defense minister way back in 2003. And he quit the office in 2003. And in 2000, after he quitting the office, Wuhan Institute of Virology was established in that particular year after he quit the office. So you have the top leaders giving their opinions about biological weapons way back 20 years back. So what is the logic is that you can do damage to large populations of your enemies. So if you consider China and US rivalry and all, Chinese always used to have this feeling that they can't do anything to Japan, Taiwan, or Vietnam or India when US is already there. But if US or any other country suffers a significant loss due to the biological weapons, and they may not be, they would opt for a nuclear retaliation, and China should have some missile defense systems and all. But how do you look at this thing that? But this is not the only thing that China does not have. So what are the next other things that Chinese leadership had promoted biological weapons or not? Now, if this is a statement coming from Chinese defense minister, then we should also look at how ancient Chinese used diseases to change their thing. So first thing is that they used plague in ancient China to win over the other rival kingdoms and all. So this is not the first time that Chinese are using diseases to control power. So why did Ming Dynasty collapse? Is because of plague. And 2000 years ago, the famous battle of Red Cliffs, which China loves so intensely, was also based, the result was based on a disease. Plague was going on in the mind of Cao Cao, and the Prime Minister Cao Cao, famous Prime Minister in China. So these diseases has a huge influence in Chinese history in warfare. So we can't discount Chinese military not using this diseases and its warfare to win over the enemy. And when we look at art of war also, it also looks at winning over the enemy without much damage to ourselves. This is something that now China has done this, because China has how much of damage in the last 1 year? When we look at it, hardly it has reported some 1 lakh infections and 4,000 death. So what is the percentage? 4%, which is very high. And there's something unique in the pattern how China has behaved after the coronavirus in the globe. Let us come case by case and bit by bit how it has changed its thing. So first is that the major concern, how do you identify the disease and the genome construction of the disease. So according to a Chaichian report, which is a major Chinese publication, now we don't have it. It was published in Chinese, but we have the English translation. So the first case of genetic identification was done. The sample was taken on December 12, 2019. Now, normally it takes a couple of days for people to identify and make a genetics genome sequence of the entire DSMs. Now, when did China publish its first genetic sequence of this coronavirus in the online or viral database, global databases? Not till January 11th. So why you delayed for 13 to 14 days the sequencing to the entire world? This is a very big thing because this is also the day when the first death in China related to the virus was announced, January 11, 2020. So if the sample was collected on December 23rd, 2019, the genetic sequence was done by Christmas 2019. Why you have to wait for 2 weeks and more to publish it across the world? In fact, this is not the only thing. This is also something which should be looked at very carefully because lack of information. Why you are not providing information to the entire world? That is the first thing, because nobody had it. And it also had the same date when they announced, Thailand reported its first case. So this 15 days delay then was the only database that coming from Chinese sources. The hospital which sent this case sample for the lab based in Shanghai or Beijing or wherever it is. So universities were also part of it. Fudan University in Shanghai and some labs in Beijing were also part of this thing to genetically sequence the virus. So what they delayed is they did not receive the genetic sequencing. The hospital never received in Wuhan, but they received the information that this is a new kind of coronavirus. That's all. That was orally said in a telephonic conversation from the lab towards the hospital. So the hospitals never had that information how to treat them. This is one major aspect. So they were hiding the information not only for the world, they were also hiding the information for them, for their hospitals and the doctors who were treating it. Now, when did this information came out? Somewhere around January 3rd and 2nd and 3rd, 2020, you had the information coming out to doctors who saw this and alarmed the people in Weibo and all. So 3 or 4 multiple places WHO collected and gave the information in its website on January 11th or January 12th, 2020. So there was a delay of genetic sequencing, which they had information, they never said to the world. They never said to their own people. Now, when did CCTV, the China major Chinese television, announced to the world that there is a new coronavirus? It was on January 9th, 2020. So why we are not having the information to the Chinese themselves? So this is another thing which is more problematic if you are going to look into this thing. Then is this information blockade only once? No, it happened multiple times. What kind of information blockade China was doing? China said the Chinese mayor in for Wuhan said between January 10th and January 23rd, the day when lockdown was announced in Wuhan, there were 5 million people who left Wuhan to other places in China and across the world. So all these 5 million people, what is the population of Wuhan? Nearly 10 to 12 million, and half of the population migrated to other places, fearing the virus or something else. So this is a statement of the person. Now, what was China doing? It was allowing the people to move out of Wuhan, but inside China, they could track these people very easily. But it was not so easy outside. So that is a major concern. So most of the people who traveled in this 5 million have traveled to nearby places in Wuhan. So all those are neighboring things, 60 to 70%. So they could easily track them and identify the people who traveled to Wuhan, and they were sent to quarantine or isolation or get treated. That is one. But what is the next thing is that after the lockdown, world started to stop the airways to China. So India, I guess, stopped it on January 26, 2020 or somewhere like that. So we stopped it to entire East Asian sector, Japan, China, Korea, even Southeast Asia also, not entire Southeast Asia, but Taiwan and other places. So similarly, US also stopped somewhere on February 1st. But a significant number of people have traveled who are asymptomatic thing. So China was saying to the world, there are symptoms related to the disease. Now, when did this asymptomatic virus came up? The Chinese media first started the asymptomatic thing on February 22nd, 2020. So it's after nearly 40 days after the identification of virus, they are telling to the world that there is an asymptomatic virus. And we have allowed millions of people to do air travel without having any knowledge that they are symptomatic, there is symptomatic virus and there is asymptomatic virus. So you are allowing the spread of virus with holding the information. This is very important if you understand the impact now. It may not be such a big impact in 2020 early beginning, but for 40, and then for example, if we take the case of Iran, Mahan Airlines of Iran have operated planes till March 7th. After the identification of asymptomatic virus, China and Iran had airlines connectivity till March 7th. So that was also 20 days in between. So even after identification of virus, you are allowing your airlines to have it. That is one. So what is China's role in this? They had, if they had information about asymptomatic in January, in February, why they did not? And then there were countries who wanted to stop their air connectivity with China. China was abusing them that you are using racial things and all for deceased people in Wuhan, and this is not this is against human rights and all. But when you are looking now, China, there are so many international students, lakhs of them who are studying in China. They could not go back to China. Why they could not go back to China is because China is not allowing any of its international students to return back and continue their education. So why they are not allowing? If China had so less death rate, and Chinese media for many months have claimed that their own Chinese traditional medicine have cured 90% to 95% of their coronavirus patients were cured by this simple formulation of TCM. Why they have to stop the foreigners again coming back from other countries? This is first. If can't they, as a superpower, can't they handle this few people? And why they are fearing the entry of foreigners when I think many democracies are not doing that, but Chinese are doing it. China is not allowing the foreign people to enter China. As foreign students who are in different universities across China, and China has lakhs of people like that. There will be millions of people So who want to go back to China? But China has stopped all of them, and it can't handle this thing after having the advanced artificial intelligence technologies and all. Why? So this is something that should be questioned first, and why such kind of fear China is having when they can control the virus in their own country, but they are not able to bring people from outside. That is one. Then why they have allowed only very little people to come in, even the overseas Chinese. They are not taking a huge number of people inside China. So why they have stopped entire world to get into China? That is one. Now coming to the investigations that happened, agency France Prancy, French news agency AFP have reported that the investigation team which visited China, Wuhan especially, they went to visit Wuhan Institute of Virology for 4 hours, and luckily they could access the South China seafood and fruit market for only 1 hour. So a whole lot of people went for the investigation. They spent just 5 hours to investigate such bigger issue. They could not have access to anything. Most of them have not came out of their hotel rooms. So what kind of investigation into the origins might have taken place? This is for the world to understand and analyze it. So this is another part which needs to be looked at. Then coming to there was another incident in Wuhan Institute of Virology. Earlier, there was an incident when they were asked to destroy all their samples and discontinue the research in another incident, but we hardly know about the details further. So this is something that is much more crucial, that Chinese labs have this kind of activity where they don't tell. So coming to the other part, yes, there is a lot of international collaboration in academic research when it comes to scientific research. So China has many MOUs and the similar thing happening in other countries. So is there an international conspiracy that exists? Saudi Arabian doctors have discovered a novel coronavirus in 2012, which is not human to human. Okay, so this coronavirus sample was taken into a lab in Canada, and then what happened to the scientist who received the sample in Canada on behalf of that lab? He is no more. He is dead in Kenya, Nairobi in 2019. So when did in this from the Canada lab, there was a investigation in May 2019, 6 months before something corona came into the picture. So the Canadian police have kicked off the Chinese scientist to the world. Then what happens to the people? So one Chinese scientist from the Canadian lab was thrown away in July 2019. Then what happens to the other world? So could they have weaponized this sample in Wuhan? Yes, this Chinese scientist who was thrown out from Canada was traveling from Canada to Wuhan multiple times in his tenure. So this calls for something strange and which creates much more doubts. And this is something because Canada was also very, they were also arrested Huawei CEO or somebody, Chinese telecom CEO. And hardly we know any details about it. But this is something that why Canada has to do certain things to Chinese to that extent. They have arrested a foreign company's big CEO. This is something. But a lab sample going away from Canadian lab regarding coronavirus, that was not human to human. And how did it go to this extent that it could get this thing? So hardly anything is happening. Now, what are the genetic sequencing results which came out in China? 80 to 90% said it is closer to SARS and all, and also the bad thing. But if it is also similar, then the Chinese also in the initial investigation found out that when the SARS testing, how do you report SARS testing, they were doing it. We are not having the same thing. So how do we look at this thing? Um, First thing is that they were not ready for, they did not have the mechanism to test and identify coronavirus themselves. This is what they never had it. So this happened in January, mid-January. So they did not have it. They could not identify the virus with SARS testing model. And most of the samples which had this coronavirus could not get tested with the SARS thing. So when you keep the SARS testing model, it was showing negative for SARS. So does SARS have some relation to this? That has to be done scientifically. I'm not sure about this thing also, but these are the existing narratives. But what are the other things which has to be looked at in terms of China's role in this thing? If these two are not only parameters, then recently last year there was a news that Wuhan Institute of Virology and Chinese were testing trying to establish a lab in Pakistan, which might be a concern for in the South Asian region regarding this kind of secrecy thing. Then there is another issue which is much more impactful, is that how do we see the role of Chinese attacking the various research institutions across the world? It is not happening only one particular country. It happened across the world. Let us go and check what happened in SII in Pune. There was a fire accident. What happened in Reddy Labs? And we see the cloud servers of Reddy Labs, which now want to collaborate with Russian and launch Russian vaccine Sputnik 5. Their servers were attacked by Chinese, and but we really don't know who attacked, but there was a server attack on pharmaceutical companies. Then similarly, we have a lot of attacks on Bharat Biotech regarding their vaccine by many Indians also who are much closer to their affiliations with the Chinese Communist Party or communist ideology. Then now coming to the other part, if these are the trends, there should be some more investigations done. And coming to the recent reports that they wanted to use that, but there is something which was they wanted to do that, but can they really do it? Can mutations really happen? Regarding India, there was one paper from IIT Delhi, which came in February or March 2020, which said that they have taken a SARS virus and they tried to manipulate something like HIV or AIDS, and which resulted in manipulation of the of the virus, and try to use a spike protein or something. Then it could have been weaponized in certain manner. That paper was withdrawn in India. This is one incident which we never also looked seriously. Then coming to the next part, there was one incident where Chinese were doing this kind of research of genetic editing. In May 2019, a Chinese scientist claimed that he could genetically edit embryos of the embryos, and the genetically edited babies were produced. So this narrative continued in China for 6 months. Then on December 3rd, 2019, the scientist was arrested, charges were framed and arrested. On December 30, when globally this virus came into the limelight, into the global media, he was convicted and jailed. So there are many cases which has to be very closely looked at. And what are the benefits why people want to do such research? If you are thinking in terms of military, maybe I can use this virus for in a short duration tactical army thing. The opposite army gets weakened without even fighting. So it would finish off the courage of the opposite morale and courage of the opposite enemy army, and it can be used easily to win wars in shorter duration, capture land, capture mind, or decrease the attack psychologically other countries. Because you mock them that you can't handle your this pandemic or disease or something, and why China is not allowing uh, other students or foreign students also. We also understand that China has hardly how much 3 beds. India has a capacity of 2.3 beds for a 1,000 population. They have 3 beds, so they also don't have huge amount of population where you want to see they have a huge infrastructure in health. So they tried to export the problem to the entire world, and they have escaped. Now look how they benefited out of it. China dominates Indian API medicine industry. So most of India's pharmaceutical industry have to import API. We hardly have any information how much of API prices have increased from China in the last 1 year when people are suffering. They could have made a lot of billions. Then China have exported a lot of masks across the world. Somewhere in May 2020, when I looked the data of the Chinese aid versus Chinese exports to US, they were selling 1,000 for every 100 masks. They were giving one mask as free for US. This is what they were earning. Now, all this China has developed machines which can produce 60,000 masks per hour. So that's a huge amount. They can produce in large numbers, they can export to the other countries, they can earn. Now, do you think that China is helping other countries? No. Recently, they have blocked the shipments of pharmaceuticals to India, emergency medical supplies and all. So Sichuan Airlines have stopped air cargo of 26 flights during the second day recently. So there's a continuous trouble which is brewing on. So it's time to look China in a different way rather than in a constructive, positive friendship, all these things. We have to be very suspicious of China in future if you want to avoid all these things. And also let us understand there's a lot of deception which happens. We recently had something coming from Lancet Journal claiming that 10 million people will be dead in India by August or something, which could be also true, nothing to be shying away. But how did Lancet look at Chinese thing? Lancet into Feb 2020 have rejected a letter by Chinese nurses claiming that it is not authentic. Then in June 2020, they said that we have something like China should not be blamed for COVID-19 pandemic. So this is what Lancet says. But now currently Lancet says that India might have, because a Chinese would be writing in British journal Lancet and claiming that India might have a million deaths in coming 6 months. So this kind of narratives also do emerge from China, which has to be very carefully looked at. Okay, I stop here. Let's take questions.
So before I move, before someone poses the question, I have a question. How do we see the role of these researchers in producing these narratives? Because what I could make out of these, all the reports and all what you have said, is that there are certain proponents of out of lab origin of COVID-19 who have published research articles, and there are supporters of natural origin of SARS-CoV-2 who authored opinion pieces and jointly signed letters in support. So how do you see the role of these researchers in framing a narrative? Because I've recently read a book by a former RAW director, and he has said that the country which is able to sell its narrative is the most dominant country of the world.
Sometimes narratives can be sold successfully, sometimes narratives can't be sold. Let us come to this fact. Now, if you are coming to the Indian narrative, Communist Party of India, okay, we have many communist parties which contest elections. say that it is a pandemic, it is natural origin. They had given substantial credit to the Chinese in their statements or whatever thing they have said uh, in the last 1 year or in the initial months of Corona and all. Okay. Now, what happens to, will they really sell to themselves? Recently, if you have looked in the last 1 week, there is another Communist Party of India which believes in a revolution with the guns. They are infected. Nearly 400 people are infected because I track them every day. So they are not even saying it as COVID-19. Forget saying Wuhan or China or something. They are not even saying it as COVID-19. They say it as illness. They're not even able to sell to their own people or their own cadres that you please call it as COVID-19, because police, most of the cadres are running away to the medical hospitals and all those things. So people can't sell even if you want to sell. That is one. So there are limitations to the scholars' ability to sell their narrative. That is first. Then second, do we have the ability to question the narrative? That should be increased in India, especially because if you are selling this narrative, it's okay. I understand there are narratives which are because of the financial reasons and ideological reasons we have narrative building, but a narrative should also be questioned, and it should be presented with facts. If you don't have facts, you can't even sell your narrative. Now, the problem with the facts is that you also need the support of the media, and sometimes some facts are very hard to digest, so and difficult to and they can have much impact on the economy and also on the psychological strength of a human. So sometimes it is also institutions or the governance systems also want to not to tell you the facts, rather than they would prefer bad origin theory. Why would see coming to the fact is that China said in somewhere in February end that coronavirus is airborne virus. But do we, our media was hiding it. They made some new stories in March 2020, but since people will fear, some of the media will drop these stories and they remove the thing. So media is also part of the narrative. If you might have created awareness about COVID in the initial months, you might have decreased a lot of impact as of now. But people were not ready. But if you said to the people that the virus was airborne, people would have feared. People would not even come out. So that is the impact of this narrative also. So sometimes narratives help, sometimes, but there is a linkage to what narratives are. Like Lancet has a narrative which would not allow anything written against China, but will predict millions of deaths in India. So Lancet has a narrative. So the narrative exists, and the narrative is built by and funded by Chinese. And in fact, if you see somewhere in the middle of 2020, there were many people who were not for getting funded for their different versions on coronavirus.
We have another question from Dr. R. Chandrasekhar. He's asking, apart from any criticism of China against China, whether China has been successful in fighting COVID-19, and if yes, why not we could adapt China's model here?
We can't adapt China model because we are a democracy. We can't even force people to wear mask, and we can't tell people not to protest. That is first. Then we can't tell people to shut down everything and remain in home, because in Wuhan, in lockdown, people were not allowed to come out of their homes. Today we can go, if you go, if we have something, we have our markets open, but it is not the same case in across the world. In a democracy, you want to tell people what, why, and all. But in a dictatorship like China, there's no necessary to tell anything. And if China was successful, it is successful because it will, even if you walk on a street, the CCTV camera with artificial intelligence capacity will tell you whether you are sneezing, coughing, or you are walking perfect, or you are walking with weakness and all. So they can track these things. But if you ask your people to have such kind of artificial intelligence based CCTV camera mechanism, the people in India will come and tell us that our privacy is at loss.
How is China able to block information about the pandemic without any repercussions? And this much only.
Okay. Block information is that, information is blocked in various ways. One is that they don't allow people to their own people to view what the world says about China. That is first thing. So they I don't think Chinese citizens are really aware of what kind of views other countries which are facing coronavirus really have on China has been sent to the Chinese leadership or Chinese people. That is first. So another thing is that China is having this year 2021, which is their centenary celebrations where Communist Party of China is established. So if a negative view develops across the world against China, and if the Chinese people know about this thing, that China has huge problem in its global standing and all, so that would remain a major concern for domestic stability in China. It can lead to a revolution in future, because when a leadership might get weakened, then you might see a different kind of thing happening in China, because this is nothing new, because there were attempts to democratize the Chinese society multiple times. There were many parties which were formed in small numbers. Couple of parties like Chinese Democratic Party in 1997, where Xi Jinping in Zhejiang province, where Xi Jinping used to come, and those people have went and met Bill Clinton. So tomorrow, what kind of information Chinese people might give to the whole world is a bigger thing, and China wants to shape the narrative in different ways. One is wolf warrior diplomacy, where they accused US military of sending the virus during World Military Games and infecting the Chinese in Wuhan. This is what they accused. And now, if we go by this theory, then it is a biological thing. When the Chinese accuse the US military of it is a biological thing, then and the Chinese diplomats are saying it, and nobody else is saying it. Chinese diplomats have admitted that US came, and then it is a biological warfare. Then it is a biological warfare. But they have retreated from those statements and all. So that's the problem. Then how they are able to say it is that they have made sure to create fear in their own domestic population, that initially China was facing a problem. Now China is not facing the problem, because they have not allowed the people to move freely, which is their ability, because of their technology and other things, because they can track you everywhere, anywhere. In places like Zhejiang, in Xinjiang and Tibet, you have more CCTV cameras on roads rather than the windows on your homes. So every road has more CCTV rather than the homes have their and buildings have their own windows. So this is the ability of Chinese monitoring. So where do you have the situation where people don't have much freedom to say things and do things against the government? And even if they do, the federal government would never face this. Rather, the blame would be shifted towards the local administration, which would be the Wuhan local mayor or local provincial government, and then the blame goes away.
Next question we have is that, can we relate this Chinese aggression on boundaries to the turmoil caused by the virus? Someone from the participants have sent this.
Okay, Chinese aggression, turmoil caused by the virus. To be frank, there are multiple things. Yes, it could be a diversion to the entire world, to divert the thing from when you are making, when the damage is going to be so huge. So they wanted to divert the mind and institutions of the other countries towards other issues. So this is something that China is very famous for. And most of the time, these communist parties have this deception as a major weapon, where they would use it. So when virus was spreading, they were using different narrative. When virus has increased, they were saying different things. The language, the tone, the people, they changed. So the wolf warrior diplomacy emerged only after virus came a bigger issue in the world, rather than when it was in China. When it was in China, it was asking for help. It was asking for aid, and it has took aid. Even India has supplied from 50 tons of medical supplies to China. And in fact, one of the interesting facet is that we could not even evacuate our own citizens from China. First two evacuations happened in couple of days, and for the third evacuation, they made sure for 1 month delay, because our Indian Home Minister was visiting Arunachal Pradesh.
Indeed, sir. There's a question in the chat box. Sir, do you think how prevention measure failures would force affected country like India and others to cooperate with China in medical aid and vaccination, as it is a global challenge, require a cooperative solution, not one-sided?
The problem for cooperative solution is trust building. How do you trust the Chinese again? That is a major factor. Now, let us come to the vaccine issue itself. China has its own vaccine, but the number of side effects with its vaccine is very high. And now 60 plus side effects are coming with the Chinese vaccine. Okay. Then coming to the other part, what is the efficacy ratio of the Chinese vaccine? It's nearly 50%, where when it is about Indian or any other European or Western vaccine, the efficacy ratio is very high, and it is in around 80s. But when it is coming to Chinese, it is 50%. But what kind of cooperation China can do? But China, there were attempts to, we also looked at cooperating with China. In February 2020, India called for a global tender to procure 1.5 million coronavirus vaccination testing kits. And all that we got was faulty testing kits to the ICMR, where we could not even track and deploy. Now we get allegations and accusations in India that our airports did not have the facilities to track the virus and identify the virus. But we were not even having the testing kits for our laboratories where you could track and identify. Now, if you can only check that body temperature at airport screening, but it does not mean that you have a virus in real or not. But the testing kits supplied by China in February 2020 or March 2020 were faulty. So in the beginning process itself, you started somewhere where the faulty testing kits were supplied. Then you look at the medical supplies recently in the second wave, where they halted the cargo planes, which are not even passenger planes, and they were fearing that Indian variant or whatever is more popular will get into China from India. So they stopped medical supplies. How do you cooperate with a country which is not cooperating during a pandemic time? Now, what kind of cooperation did China did with any other country also? Let us take the example of its own best friend, Pakistan. They gifted some 1.5 million vaccines to China, Sinovac, and Pakistan was requesting the vaccines. They gave 1.5 1.5 lakh vaccines to China, and China asked, bring your airplane to China and take the vaccination doses back to Pakistan. So this is PIA thing. So Pakistan sent its Air Force plane to China and get its vaccines as a gift. So where is the scope of cooperation? Even Pakistan is not getting the cooperation, where India can get the cooperation.
We have a question from Vaishali. So she's asking, Vrushali, Due to COVID-19 situation, unemployment is on its peak. What is the most highly paid field post this situation in law as well as in IT sector for a student?
A very difficult situation. Everybody is facing this problem. Now, only experts would be able to tell you. Maybe those who know virology is a very good field for future, or genetic research, genome sequencing, because we hardly have any people. And even in the last 1.5 year, how many coronavirus patients samples were their genome sequenced in India is hardly 20,000 samples. So we have very less people who we used only 20,000, where USA and China did 1 lakh samples. So genetic research and all these things are very highly paid. We don't have it. Then doctors, medical doctors, highly paid. But imagine the situation: Chinese doctors don't have much value even now in India. They have to attempt write an exam for conducted by Indian Medical Council, and they have to pass the exam, and then they can practice in India.
If anyone else is having any question, kindly post this. Sir, recently there was an article by Nicholas Wade who published a 10,000 word article on Medium. So he argued, there is background noise, I think. Just a minute, sir. So he argued that the possibility that the novel coronavirus was a human engineered pathogen and it had escaped accidentally or otherwise from a lab of Wuhan would not be dismissed out of hand. So, but soon after it was published, his article was seized upon both by political commentators and conspiracy theorists, and it also drew comments from some scientists that the virus origins warrant further investigation. So he used this concept of gain of function research as well, which uses mutations in the viruses, and it was alleged that some organizations and some people also funded these kinds of research, which is gain of function research. How do you see this morally? How do you see this principle as a in the form of morality? Whether this principle should be morally acceptable in the current seeing the current situation and in the field of these pathogens or study of viruses and all?
Look, science is very difficult, and sometimes it is a risky thing. And we are not scientists, but most of the scientific experiments have been done hundreds of times. Okay. Now, if you look about morality, now there are a few things which China has invented in the past, and they claim it as a very great inventions. One is silk. Now, how do you generate silk? After killing a thread of silk, you produce after killing hundreds of silkworms. Then how do you generate paper? You have to kill a lot of trees to generate paper, and this has been happening in a different way. Now, if you don't want silk, if you don't want paper, then sometimes see, research is very risky. When it comes, you might be able to be accountable in those situations. Only thing is that sometimes who is giving you the authority, permission and financing of research? Now, any individual can't do this kind of research in a BSL-4 lab. In a BSL-4 lab, you always need to have, be in a protective clothing or protective wear where you have to function with those viruses. But the time duration in a, when you compare in a BSL 1, 2 or 3 versus BSL 4, the biosafety level increases, the time of duration of doing a research also increases. So there are many issues when you are doing research. Now, research can have multiple functions. Now, some people would say if we don't do this thing, we may not produce something new. Now, some people will say if you do this thing, this can result in a harmful manner. Now, this is the same thing where you are, the scientist would also be in a dilemma where I will not be in a position to sacrifice my economic and my academic things because of this risk. If I don't know the risk thing, then that is a different thing. But if I know the risk and what is the potential danger with my research, then there should be a review scrutiny at a higher level, because permissions or not, for the funding is a bigger issue, and it is not only an individual will get the funding. The funding would be, there would be a team of scientists, team of experts who would give me the funding for a particular research. Now, there will be standards, ethics, and all. But what happens, the problem lies in uh, dictatorship governments or monopoly, where you have one party system. There, the vested interest of a particular political party or a particular party in power, or the military interest of a particular state would dominate over other things. So, nuclear boom, you can't do, if you use this same concept, you will not have any nuclear energy, and then you will not have any nuclear weapons. So they are both. A nuclear research will have weapons, also this thing. Similarly, you have many things. It is including in lasers. Lasers are used in medical. Lasers are also used in military warfare. The same thing goes for space communication. Space weapons are also there. But today we are using space to communicate, internet, GPS, all most of the things. There are many things which are dual use in technology and research. Now, what kind of research you are allowing, that is a bigger thing, where ethics do play into the major role. Now, what ethics in research should be there is a larger question, which a lot of scientific community has to answer. But the vested interest of the society and also the other people will be there. So sometimes corporate research, economic interest will also be there. In America, you have a lot of military research where a huge amount of military research is done by corporate people, and multinational companies will be giving you the output. But in India or China, you have state-owned enterprises or your own public sector units will develop you many technologies and then transfer it to the private sector. This is a dual use thing. So you have, if a corporate, imagine in US, you might have some BSL lab in a private sector company for a biological unit, and in China you might have for a state-owned enterprise or Wuhan Institute of Virology or somebody. Then a similar accident can happen in a lab, and a similar accident can happen in a state-owned enterprises. But what happened later, whether it is natural, whether it is a lab, what happened later is a much bigger thing, where governance issues do have to come up, where why there was information blackout and why there was substantial information blackout, which resulted in this larger disease problem.
Can you hear me, Uta?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay, finally I'm audible. I was trying to get across to you, but I wasn't able to for a long time. So, in fact, some of my questions have already been asked. There's another question by Vaishali. She's asking, China says they were able to cope with the situation. If yes, why can't India adopt such a strategy? Why is India unable to handle the pandemic even there was a gap before the second wave?
See, look, regarding the Indian condition, if you are saying when was the duration of the second wave? Okay, second wave happened in April. Okay, right? Then was India not having cases from December? November was the end of the first wave, and then right from November to April, we were having some 70% of our cases in two particular states. One is Kerala, one is Maharashtra. Substantial amount of the cases. Then we had some cases in Bengal and other states also. So during this time, I think, see, for me, we also need to understand how many people came from outside to India after losing their livelihoods and all. If you are looking at Kerala itself, there were nearly 25 lakhs, 2.5 million people who returned from outside countries, from Gulf countries. So there's a lot of a migration of people. do we really have the capability? Yes, we built our capability to test, but you can't build people to give frank opinions and frank inputs and tell factual things. So does your institutions. You have bureaucrats who have not provided proper inputs. You have people, citizens who have not provided. Now, see, Arogya Setu app was started on April 2nd, 2020. Now also you have some 18 crore people using Arogya Setu app. Now tell me, if you are not ready to use, now India might have 50% of smartphone penetration, but we hardly have only 20% of the smartphone people using Arogya Setu. So how do you track people? So if you are using Arogya Setu, you can at least get the situation that all your contacts can be traced. Now, if you're not using the app which is developed to trace people who are having disease, and you can self-identify yourself. If you're not trying to identify yourself, if you're not trying to install the app, then how can you trace things? Now, China developed this app of identifying those people who went to Wuhan on February 15th, 2020. Now, how much time it took? Nearly 60 days after the disease emerged. So after 60 days, but India developed this very quickly. India started this app on April 2nd, 2020. When we had the first virus case was on January 30, 2020. So we had just hardly 2 months. China also had hardly 2 months. But we also tracked and quarantined some 30 to 40,000 people who were international travelers in January. But people were not giving right information regarding their health and their symptoms. The other problem is that asymptomatic virus. Now, how do you trace people who are asymptomatic? This is the real concern. Now, the China really reduced in the initial stage itself by imposing a harsh lockdown for a couple of months. The lockdown in Wuhan was for 74 days. People could not come out of their apartment, or they were even their doors. The PLA military went to their doors and they locked the doors. They put wooden beams and all, and they completely removed the access of their homes, and they supplied something to the entire city. So that happened in China, but they could not even come out for buying vegetables, buying groceries and all. But we did not impose such harsh lockdown, which is not possible in country like India. But if we had this, there were some other issues. I think we could not identify the variants, what impact the variants will have. One is that why I said genetic sequencing and all, because how many samples we tested? Somewhere 20,000, they tested 1 lakh. Okay, they had just 1 lakh cases also. That is another thing, that we really don't have the capacity. That is one.
Okay, some of these questions Shubham I put like the question on gain of function research. I put that question. Basically, this is the research about where they create these dangerous viruses, artificially create them, and then try to get ahead of the curve. Okay, even before they have naturally occurred, they try to create these dangerous viruses and then do. You had already mentioned this in your presentation. So what I was asking is it really ethical to do so, or isn't it very dangerous?
See, nowadays, what kind of they have done is that they were experimenting with a humanoid mice. So they would keep some genetics of human into a mice, and then they were testing on it. But what about genetic editing? What about artificial recreation of many body parts? That is also happening. So research would have multiple things. If you're a scientist, if you look from a scientific point of view, sometimes it might generate a lot of things which are beneficial to humans. And we have plastic surgeries. Then there are some things which are useful to the human civilization and human community also. But if you are predicting something in future, in advance, is it right or wrong? If you are predicting something good, which can, and then you can decrease the impact, it might be a very good research. But if you are creating this kind of problem, then there's a problem. But if you are allowing something, see, if ethics are to be said, then we are trying to create plants in space also. Even in outer space, we want to build some how plants grow, and all those things are being experimented. So most of the experiments in outer space, we really don't know what are the outputs and all. The speed at which they grow is much faster than what they grow in the earth. So coming about the ethics, we need to look at ethics and functions culturally. Now, China is a materialistic society. Communist ideology is a materialistic society. Ethics do have something in communist ideology. That is something that we have to look at. Right from Karl Marx, it is about means of production, all those things. So if you have something which is going to give materialistic benefit to the society or a particular ideology, why not they try it? That could be there. But if you are trying with a civilizational thing, then it is negative. But if you are looking at a materialistic aspect of research, then it could be capitalist, it could be mercantilist in whatever way. Uh, it could be beneficial in other ways. Now, is it ethical? I'm not sure, but it is up to the individual or the morals of the society, how the society views it and all. Because see, pandemic is also big business. Just look at what was the hawk population in China in 2019. It was very less. Most of its hawk population had gone out of means China lost 3/4 of its hog population in 2019. America supplied huge amount of meat to China for their food consumption, and it was beneficial to US. But now the hog population has stabilized in China after nearly 2 years. So it has recovered all its hog population after 2 years, but it lost because of a one similar disease which it could not control in 2019. Forget humans, I'm telling about hog or pork, so which is the most consumed food material in China. They could not control even in 2019. So a disease was beneficial to US for its commercial thing, but most of the Chinese agriculture farmers or peasants have suffered a loss. So here also you have the similar thing. China is benefiting by supplying APIs. China is benefiting by supplying masks, medical materials. It is selling its own vaccine, which may not be useful to the world. The cost of Chinese vaccine is much more higher than any other vaccine in the world available market. And many countries are buying it. That is another thing which we have to look at it. So it could be accidental or a functional research. Sometimes, yes, if you are looking at research, sometimes most of the research was ahead of its time, and it might benefit humans and other people also a lot of times. Now we might face research in this way, and but what are the preventive measures? You have to take something which is more precautions in every research, whether it is social science, whether it is scientific, whether it is aeronautical, whether it is any other research, or even chemical experiments. So will legal law determine this functional research? If you control the research here, some dictatorship governments in US or North Korea or some other place will give them opportunities, funding, and they will go there. They will continue the research. Now, there are many espionage activities which Chinese do in other countries where they are being funded.
Right.
Sir, I have one question. If China is doing so much misdeeds, so why there are no repercussions for it? I mean, can we presume that China is moving from a revisionist power to a status quoist power?
Repercussions, see, do you have the ability to create repercussions? Yes, we did give them the thing in blocking all their internet thing. Yes, all their apps are blocked. But does it really matter to China? Because it has its own domestic market, which is so huge. TikTok or something is it still available in US or not? Is a major question, because most of the things which you have blocked, they are available in US stock market. They are listed. So they are listed companies in US, but you are blocking it. It's fine that you don't have access to them, and more, and you were giving the numbers to them. So you can do something, but can you do major things? Okay, for doing major things, you have to store. See, delinking from China is one option which even US is considering very seriously. But do you have the ability to delink from China entirely? And are you on your feet to do that or not? Will remain a major thing. If you have the ability, you can do it. And if you are sustainable yourself, then you can do it, because China supplies 90% of the world's rare earths materials. So you may not have a smartphone or a laptop or a communication device or optical fiber which is not made in China. Everything, some component or the other is made in China in the globalization thing. But what can you avoid is that, see, what kind of things we can avoid is mostly generally we avoid security things which are sensitive to the national security and military and defense related stuff, and where you have major locations, you don't give them projects. That has been for a longer duration. But society can also decide what do you want to purchase and what you don't want to purchase. It's your call what you want to purchase. Can you avoid purchasing Chinese goods and not giving benefits to Chinese trade volume? So imagine in the last 15-16 years, India has given significant amount of surplus trade to China, somewhere close to $1 trillion. Your economy is close to $2.5 trillion. You had given $1 trillion plus trade surplus to China. What did it do? It built 20,000 kilometers of high-speed railways. So where did it come from? Trade surplus from India. So what do you export to China? You exported iron ore for Beijing Olympics from Karnataka and Goa, and they produce the steel and they build their Beijing Olympic stadiums, and that's all. You got you are exporting raw materials. If you have exported fine stainless steel, it would have been a better option. So you have to change your own economy and its own model to contain China or to challenge China, which should be the first major objective. See, Make in India is another thing to challenge China in for their made in China. You can have incredible India to contest against amazing China, but you can have SEZ policy to their SEZ. But what you create versus what they create will determine what you have and what they have. See, can you create the same copy paste model of China? It's not possible. Can you create an alternate model to China? It's possible. Can you stand on your own feet and then you can challenge China? It's possible. If now, if you want to look at the current situation, imagine automobile industry. After 15 years, you will have a lot of EV sector. Now, China has the technology of lithium-ion battery, but can you create some battery system where you don't need to procure lithium-ion battery? All the lithium mines across the world are controlled by China. Why can't we have some other ion battery which is controlled by India? You can create aluminum ion or a iron ion, something which you can do certain kind of research. This research is happening in IIT Chennai.
Right.
So a lot of questions have been asked regarding the role of WHO in viral transmission and suppressing the information of COVID-19, in which China has colluded with, hand in gloves with WHO. Does it pave the way for establishment of a new watchdog, a global watchdog that can keep an eye over all these issues?
No, see, the problem lies is that what does WHO have? See, the reporting, WHO will have its own office in the capital of India or even capital of China. More than that, WHO may not have. WHO has limited resources. It is like an information exchange sharing where you give information to the world about the particular things which are dangerous in your own country. So WHO would provide a platform where you can exchange your information to the other people. Can WHO come and help you? Yes, it helps in countries where you don't have the facilities, but larger countries don't take the support of uh, generally larger countries which are self-sustained and all, they avoid taking foreign aid or international aid like WHO. So whether it is China, whether it is India, or whether it is USA, if they are funding these institutions, they may fund it for their own international agenda rather than to cooperate or to do service or something. So if there is something what they are doing, they would also do something where they would not have something to help us. So those things are also there. So WHO may not be in a position. Only thing is that you can create democratic structures in WHO where the verification of information and transparency can be increased. That is one thing that can be done. If if Taiwan said that there is a human-to-human transmission threat to WHO on December 30, 2019, but China did not agree or did not confirm it. So you delayed the things by another 20 days. So when did WHO and China said there is a human-to-human transmission? 3 days before Wuhan lockdown happened. So why Taiwan's information was ignored? Because Taiwan is not having that mandate in WHO, is not a member of WHO or something like that. So these are the problems. So there are things what you can do is the democratize, verify, check, but do international agencies have that power over domestic systems in a sovereign country? That is not possible. So don't expect it in a dictator country also.
But my question is that does this intensifies the need of a global kind of cooperation, maybe led by a strong country like USA? A global watchdog may be established who can keep a check upon all these issues. I mean, these research work that is going on, because this has brought the world to the on the knees. So these kind of research works which are going on in various labs, they can have a check on these things. So can we create this global watchdog? Is it possible?
Look, I don't think it is possible because we have substantial cooperation with every university will have its own outreach. Do you think that these labs don't have their exchanges and cooperation with other countries? Everybody works with international cooperation. Still, information has not flowed out, or there is a lot of deception or misinformation which was flowing out of China. So do you think China is not globalized? China is a very globalized country. There's a lot of information where people have, and they also have in private and public. But there is a control, there is a firewall called Great Firewall of China, which is also in the cyber domain, not even on the infrastructure way, which is a tourist place, but there is a Great Firewall which is in the public domain. The media can't go and expose them, neither track them. So even if media does not have access to Tibet or Xinjiang, hardly media goes there. Nobody goes there. And if somebody goes there, they have limited access and they do 1 or 2 interviews and they come back. So there's hardly anything. Even in Xinjiang, there are no media going to Xinjiang and doing some videos and things from concentration camps. So not possible. So even in India, there are certain places where you don't have the access to certain places. So is it possible across the world? you can't go into a DRDO lab where missiles may be stored or missiles may be manufactured. How do you tell that what is being manufactured there? It is true across the world. There are some places which are not possible for the civil society and international places to go and verify. So even even for a small agreement on nuclear supplies group or IAEA, you have allowed the foreign people to come and enter and verify your civil nuclear installations, not the military nuclear installations. So that part is taken away. So no country will allow its own scientific, military, strategic locations to be for foreign people. This is true for many other countries. So you can create another watchdog, but do they have access? That is the real question. They may not have the access. So instead of creating another watchdog, we should always increase our own capabilities to track and trace.
Indeed, sir, I agree with your views, but then what is the solution? Because I think that this COVID-19 or coronavirus is just the tip of iceberg, and there are many more viruses that are going to come in future. So is there any plausible solution for that?
Maybe science might have it. I don't have it. Scientists should provide the solution. Maybe some future people should work more on science rather than everybody working on legal or humanities. You have a lot of Indians who work on, the simple case, when this virus initial sample was sent to these genetic sequencing labs, okay, these labs are working on software technologies. They are mostly IT firms which do the scientific thing. This happened in China, and they were doing it as their routine thing. They were sequencing like any other disease does. So they were not sure that how much this is dangerous. Now they were using this virus sample and they were doing things, and most of them got infected because they had no idea. They had no idea because whatever they were doing, genetic sequencing, they had to work with a live virus and they had no idea what they were working with, and they got the virus, and the people got affected. So you can't have a BSL-4 lab to do genetic sequencing, which is more related to the IT field. Okay, if you have a lab which is working on IT field, they don't have the biological thing or the ability to how to understand biology. I'm not from a life science student, so for me, when I looked at when I tweeted about this virus on January 11, 2020, for me it was Wuhan pneumonia. So even China was using Wuhan pneumonia. They were not saying it coronavirus. They used it in the later stage. Initial days, it was pneumonia without pneumonia with unknown cause. So they don't know the cause of the pneumonia. Then the later stage they said coronavirus related pneumonia. Then it became Wuhan pneumonia. Somebody said Wuhan pneumonia because the Chinese themselves said Wuhan pneumonia. Then it became coronavirus, COVID-19, when WHO did all the nomenclature, which we now use it as COVID-19.
But sir, the leaked documents from the Chinese military meeting that held back in 2015, so that suggests that this coronavirus was discussed to be used as a biological warfare in 2015 itself. So how can we blame scientists? So there must be a solution either by the governments or either by the state, maybe a sovereign state.
That is what I'm trying to say to you, that discussions may not result in fruition all the time. Every discussion may not come. See, the time of duration that we spent for having discussion is 1 hour 40 minutes. But the WHO investigation team went to China in Wuhan, China, South China seafood market or fruit market. They went and spent just 1 hour. We are discussing for last 1 hour 40 minutes. They were investigating just for 1 hour. Now, how do you produce the output when you are not having any investigation there? Because I don't have the original sample, what happened. Everything is being gone. There is no evidence that to prove this or that. They're not providing you any information. Then you have to rely on the information, whatever you have. That is a problem. So if this is the case where even in a legal thing, if you think there are no evidence, how do you blame the victim? How do you give justice to the victim? There's no evidence. Now, naturally also, there is no evidence to prove that or to convict somebody, or artificially also there is no evidence. They're not giving any evidence. If you understand both the theories of the origin, there are no evidences, strong evidences to substantially prove anything. The problem lies here. I don't have any substantial evidences, but have to give you a theory stating this is what happened and this is what happened. Here lies the problem. And
Okay,
even in legal thing, do you give judgment without evidence?
yeah.
No, sir, indeed, never.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
we need to stop now. It has been very long.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We'll invite him again. So we'll have another discussion some other time. So
Yes.
Shubham, you can wrap it up.
Okay. Let's move on to the vote of thanks. I thank to Kota sir for joining all of us, and I thank every participant who has joined this session. And at the outset, I also thank Saurav Sharma sir, who has been a constant guide for all of us. And I'm thankful to Think India for providing such an opportunity where we can discuss all these issues. Thank you, everyone. We'll be organizing many more sessions in the future as well. And I'll be sending an email that will consist of feedback form as well as the link to join the session and a very mandatory reading upon this issue as well. Thank you. Have a good day. Take care.